we bring down the banks. This is like bringing down your mountaineering partner on the big face. You don't, you're tied to them. You don't really want to bring them down because then oh my God, I'm tied to them, we're both going down. This is what was happening in 2008. So there needs to be another part of the plan in place, which simply is a government that understands that at that point, the basket for saving the finance climber that you have suddenly clipped their belay and they're falling, the basket is this: you nationalize them. We nationalized GM in 2008. It worked. They paid us back. We saved their ass. The real economy needed saving. Finance, we paid off. We bailed out at 100 cents on the dollar to the tune of somewhere between $7 trillion and $13 trillion. I've heard both figures. Friday at UCI, I heard $13 trillion by a very distinguished economic historian. This is because of quantitative easing as well as the original bailout. So that amount of money is a kind of amazing act, but this time, if we've crashed the bank or if they happen to blow a bubble on their own, either way, we have to at that point say, yes, we'll bail you out, but now we own you. And so now we own you means the government is the board of directors, that we begin to set regulations, we begin to determine loans. It would be like the Federal Credit Union. All of these things have their precedence in earlier public utility district type moves. So at that point, with the government taking over, it would run the loan strategies, the repayment rates, and to the extent that it profited, the profits would just go into the treasury. You combine that with the obvious carbon tax that we need to put on, which is not a tax, but is paying the true cost. We need to reconceptualize. And then also the Thomas Piketty tax, which would be what he suggested 2 years ago, which is that you don't just have a progressive tax on income, because people who are wealthy enough can hide their income in another country or under the rug or in future investments in the future. So income you can hide. Capital assets, a progressive tax, sharply progressive tax on capital assets is such a game changer, such a paradigm buster, that when the Wall Street Journal and The Economist reviewed Piketty's book and they got to this last chapter, they said, oh, well, but that would never work because, and then their 500-word article ran out and they got to stop at that point. They never said why, because there is no why, because it would work. And it would be an incredibly powerful tool in terms of the horizontalization of human wealth to more of the population. There's hardly a better suggestion. And Piketty's book may have been, as some people said, 11 chapters of Marxism followed by 1 chapter of Keynesian reform suggestions. But I'm a Keynesian myself. I think we're in a Keynesian world, and I think many people who do the 11 chapters of Marxian analysis would then like to contribute something useful that could be done right now in the world. And a tax structure is not the most radical suggestion. It's already been done before. So that would create a government surplus. Instead of government being in debt to finance forever, in eternity, and therefore under the thumb of finance, government would be having a surplus, would be in control of finance, and it would have flipped the scissors, rock, paper as to who controls who. At that point, paper would control people would control governments, governments would control finance, finance would work for the people. You would have the way that the system needed to work. Now, what would we do with that money? Healthcare, of course. Free public education, of course. Through college, why not? And then also full employment, because full employment is another gigantic paradigm buster for capitalism. We have 5.4% minimum unemployment. If it goes below that, the market's depressed, and you want labor wage pressure. Wage pressure is pressure on human beings' lives and minds in order to keep them willing to work for depressed wages so that profits will be better. Once again, it's going back to that one algorithm. So what you would want at that point with full employment, if you could always get a good living wage job from the government, then private industries that existed, which would be on the margin, I would call it, would have to compete by giving a living wage themselves, and everybody would have one along with Social Security. So what would everybody do? Well, this idea that automation is going to get rid of jobs is a very silly, bad science fiction story. It's not right. It's not going to be that way. Many things take the human touch. Taking care of young people, taking care of old people, taking care of sick people, and also landscape restoration. That's the environmental work of this project, of a government that's in control of the human/biosphere future, because the two are tied together. would be an enormous amount of infrastructure changes and landscape restoration in general to get us a planet where we're not using up the biosphere's regenerative possibilities by August of every year, which is what we're doing now, but are in balance with the biosphere properly.